So what is the Great Credit Contraction? Well, I go into this in great detail in my book, but I lead off with a question of what is money? And that's really what we have is we have a lot of problems with defining what money is and how it works. Well, if we look at the liquidity pyramid, capital has been moving into the less safe and less liquid assets for hundreds of years, taking on either more risk or into things that are less liquid. Well, now it's reached a zenith and it's returning back to what is the safest and the most liquid assets. Well, as we see, most people think that Federal Reserve notes are the risk-free asset, but really it's gold and silver, and so that's where we're going. And so we have to be able to not only define what money is, but be able to measure it and see how it's affecting the liquidity pyramid, and that's the Great Credit Contraction.
Of course, a lot of the credit has been withdrawn, but I have not seen any significant decrease in M3. And I wanted to just refer to this chart that the Federal Reserve prepared on M3 for the past 3 years, and it sets the targets. And for 3 years, you've never been once in the target range. You know, if I set my targets and I perform like that as a physician, my patient would die. I mean, this would be big trouble in medicine, but here it doesn't seem to bother anybody.
Let me suggest to you that the monetary aggregates, as we measure them, are becoming increasingly complex and difficult to integrate into a set of forecasts. The problem we have is not that money is unimportant, but how we define it. By definition, all prices are indeed the ratio of an exchange of a good for money. And what we seek is what that is. Our problem is we used M1 at one point as the proxy for money, and it turned out to be very difficult as an indicator of any financial state. We then went to M2 and had the similar problem. We've never done M3 per se because it largely reflects the extent of expansion of the banking industry, and when, in effect, banks expand, in and of itself, it doesn't tell you terribly much about what the real money is. So our problem is not that we do not believe in sound money. We do. We very much believe that if you have a debased currency, that you will have a debased economy. The difficulty is in defining what part of our liquidity structure is truly money. We've had trouble ferreting out proxies for that for a number of years, and the standard we employ is whether it gives us a good forward indicator of the direction of finance and the economy. Regrettably, none of those which we've been able to develop, including MZM, has not done that. That does not mean that we think that money is irrelevant. It means that we think our measures of money have been inadequate, and as a consequence of that, we, as I've mentioned previously, have downgraded the use of the monetary aggregates for monetary policy purposes until we are able to find a more stable proxy for what we believe is the underlying money in the economy.
So it's hard to manage something you can't define.
It is not possible to manage something you can't define.
So there we go. I hope you found that interesting and useful, and I recommend you get a copy of The Great Credit Contraction so that you can realize what's going on and how to protect and preserve your wealth during this immense change that's going on.